Greetings, good morning, and welcome to Mind the Moment. This, my friends, is our coffee house in the cloud, a place to come together, build community, get centered, and see what the present moment has to present to us. It is September 11th, 2020, the 19th anniversary of the World Trade Center attacks in New York City. 2 weeks following those attacks, at a public talk at Riverside Church in Manhattan, the Vietnamese monk Thich Nhat Hanh reflected on the anger he felt as a young man caught up in the midst of the Vietnam War, which eventually forced him into exile. He said it was only with practice and only in time that he was, quote, able to see that the real enemy of man is not man. The real enemy is our ignorance, discrimination, fear, craving, and violence. He went on to say, there are ways that we can go back to ourselves and practice so that we discover our calmness, our tranquility, our lucidity. There are ways that we can practice so that we understand the real causes of suffering. And that understanding will help us to do what needs to be done and not do what could be harmful to us and to other people. Thich Nhat Hanh speaking on September 25th, 2001. I'm John Roberts from Harvard Pilgrim Health Care's mindfulness program. Joining me to help me understand what needs to be done is Tara Healey, founder and director of our program. Good morning to you, Tara.
Good morning, John. Good morning, everyone.
All right, so in just a moment or two, Tara is going to lead us in a 10-minute guided meditation, and then we'll take some Q&A. That's where you'll have a chance to get involved. In preparation, please do take a moment to open up the chat box, which you can find at the bottom of your screen. Once you have that chat box open, don't feel like you need to wait until the Q&A section to type in questions or comments. You can do so at any time. That being so, Tara, is there anything you'd like to check in with the folks at home about as we're getting started?
Yeah, John, and I think that, 9/11 is a day that is forever etched in our hearts and minds. And so with today being this day of remembering, what do you want to kind of hold in your heart and mind today, kind of as you move through the day today, what sort of, what comes to mind in terms of what you want to hold in your heart about this day that is forever with us and etched in our minds and hearts.
All right. So while folks are thinking and typing, I want you to know how grateful we are to have you joining us this morning. Do keep in mind that only Tara and I are going to be able to see anything that you type. And if we don't have the chance to read your particular question or comment out loud, please know that we do read and value them all. As we close, which will be right around 9 a.m., I'll make mention of some other ways that you can keep in touch with us too. Tara, can I ask you to begin maybe and ask
sure.
what you're holding today?
Yeah, it's as this day rolls around every year, like I remember exactly where I was. I was at work at Harvard Pilgrim in our Wellesley office, and I remember exactly who I was with. And with certain events that happen in the world that are so big, they enter our consciousness, and they stay with us. They don't go. And we typically can remember lots of details about these big things. And I think, when I think about going forward, and you think about why this even happened, my hope is to continue to develop my own peaceful heart, my own willingness to listen to others whose views are different than my own, my own commitment to peace. I think that's probably that, my own commitment to understanding difference, to listening, to, continuing to open and develop my own heart and mind.
Yeah, as much as I enjoy coming together with everyone in this virtual environment, I'm missing the fact that at Harvard Pilgrim every September 11th there would be a moment of remembrance in the front of the building where people would gather together, and it was a beautiful thing. We're just not doing that this year for obvious reasons, but hopefully next year.
So and in a way we can do it here,
That's right.
with each other today. So thinking about,
And some of the folks chiming in say
Yep.
they're thinking about community this morning, the potential for love's impact on our world. Someone says they want to remember and respect and appreciate, but also don't want to feel sad. And that's important too. I mean, to feel sad all day, you know, to also, you know, feel the hope that's also involved in,
Yes. Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
every event. All right, so
Yep.
Tara, I think that's a good place for me to turn
Okay.
it over to you to lead
Yes.
us into the contemplative portion of
Yes. So let's go ahead and settle in for our 10 minutes or so of practice. And again, as always, sitting or standing, whatever feels, whatever's calling to you today. And if you're sitting, allowing the eyes to close. If you're standing, it's a little more challenging and you might want to keep the eyes gazed open. But remember, with the eyes open or closed is fine. And see if you can surrender your weight into the support of the surface that you're on. You know, just kind of loosening the body, yet maintaining a spine that is straight but not stiff. Allowing the shoulders to relax to the degree that you can. And let's begin by taking a deep inhalation through the nose. Hold it for a count of 2. And a little bit longer of an exhalation, just as a way to settle any surface tension as we begin this morning. Feel free to do a couple more of those on your own, just as a way to settle in. Aware of your body, aware of posture. Noticing sound in the room that you're in or outside of the room. With an attitude of receptivity to sound, or just receiving sound. And as you feel ready, allowing sound to remain in the background and bringing the awareness back inward to the body. And just becoming aware of the pattern of your breath. And however you're breathing is fine. So just begin to notice the rhythm of the inhalation and the exhalation. And if it feels okay, beginning to narrow the focus of attention on that point in the body where the breath sensation is most notable to you. So it could be abdomen, chest, or nostrils. It's also fine to just have whole body breathing in, whole body breathing out awareness. Noticing where the mind is. softening the body and reconnecting with the breath. And again, noticing where the mind is, softening the body, and gently reconnecting with breath sensation, tracking the breath in and out. And as you feel ready, if your eyes were closed, you can go ahead and open the eyes and reconnect with your surroundings and reconnecting with each other.
All right. Thank you, Tara, as always. So for the folks at home, I want to make sure that everyone feels warmly welcomed and encouraged to ask Tara any questions you may have using the chat
Yeah,
box.
yes.
While you take some time to think and type, let me get us going by asking Tara one or two questions of my own. So Tara, a few moments ago, I read a quote from a public talk which Thich Nhat Hanh gave in 2001.
Yeah.
Later on in that talk, He suggests that solving conflicts between people and between peoples involves developing the art of deep listening. And this
Mm-hmm.
reminded me of something you and I were discussing a few weeks ago. We were talking about a memoir by the actor Alda, in which Alda recounts how he became a better interviewer by becoming a better listener. And he illustrates this by writing about some of the ways in which he came to understand that he had before been a bad listener. So what he wrote was this: I was paying more attention to my own assumptions than I was to my subject. When I didn't read the other person's face, I wasn't listening to their body language. I wasn't listening with my eyes. And when my questions didn't spring from what the other person was saying, I was disconnected from them. I was alone. How could the conversation have been anything but strained when I had shut myself up in my own head? All right, so Tara, do you have any thoughts on the common ways that people trip themselves up in not listening deeply, causing them to accidentally become mindless listeners? In other words,
Yeah.
what should we look out for? What are the common ways
Yeah.
we might fall into that trap?
Well, I think, John, it's so interesting, Alan Alda, because I feel like I need to take another look at him. I mean, that statement shows quite a bit of, it's mindfulness in that he was seeing his thought patterns when he was engaging with another person. He has this awareness of what he was actually doing in conversation, where I think, our habits and our patterns around communicating with others, like we're not always so aware of them. So I'm really interested in that. And I came across a quote recently that sort of speaks to this. And unfortunately, there was no author assigned to the quote, but it's basically the biggest communication problem we have is we do not listen to understand, we listen to reply. And that's what Alan Alda is also talking about in a way, at least part of that. And so I think that oftentimes when we are in a conversation, we're either speaking or we're formulating a reaction. And so this is where mindfulness can come in beautifully, because the more we practice, the more we can see the desire to, react or reply, with something from our own frame of reference, and then we can keep it at bay. If you don't see it, you can't keep it at bay. And so the thing is, the mind is going to have reactions to what you're hearing. It's just natural. But the more we cultivate this capacity of awareness, which it sounds like Alan Alda's got pretty well, we can keep all that other stuff, all of our stuff at bay and be fully, completely with another human being, which is such a gift and so rare.
Well, so let me ask you this. So can you talk about what is the connection between what we were just doing a few minutes ago, concentrating on our environment, our breath, and what you're talking about now, which is being aware of our impulses in a conversation?
Right. Yeah. So when we're sitting in meditation in formal practice, so there's a couple things going on. One is that we are bringing our attention back over and over again, just like somebody lifting weights to develop a strong body. We're developing the capacity for focus and concentration. That allows mindfulness to do its job more effectively and to see our habits and patterns with greater clarity. So the more we're steadying our attention with this desire to understand ourselves at deeper levels, the more we can then apply, so that, like John, when you and I are talking, I can see that I have impulses to say or do something, but I'm in the driver's seat, so you're training yourself to be more in the driver's seat. And does that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. And because I think what you're pointing to, which I think is so important to point out, is that when we practice formally, as we were doing before, practicing paying attention to the breath, it's not so as we're going out in the world, we can just be really good at paying attention to the breath, but rather so we can be better at paying attention to everything.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're cultivating this capacity so it's like you're practicing just like you would an instrument. If you play an instrument, you have to practice a certain amount of time daily so that when showtime comes, you're able to play. The same with a sport, and it's the same with our mind and our attention. We're actually taking that what we're cultivating off the cushion and employing it in the service of our day-to-day life.
You know, it's interesting though, because and this is, I think, the real wonderful benefit of mindfulness. So if you're a clarinet player and you spend 6 hours playing the clarinet, that means, you know, when you go out, if you pick up a clarinet, you're going to be able to play that clarinet. But it doesn't mean that you can go out and pick up and start playing the piano, right?
Right.
And so I feel with mindfulness, it's this skill of learning to pay attention does get applied to all these other, you know, instruments.
Yeah, definitely. And anybody have any thoughts on that too? Would love to hear, you know.
And on that note, folks are at least asking about some other semi-related things. Let me turn to the chat box here. Somebody asks, I've been doing my practice just before I go to sleep. Lately, I'm finding myself falling asleep before the end of the practice. Not uncommon. Should I change the time or location to prevent falling asleep in order to really focus on my practice?
Yeah, I love that question. Well, I think practice is one big experiment. And so if you're doing your practice in bed, which I'm not sure if you are, that's probably not a good idea because it's so suggestive of sleep. Your bedroom is suggestive of sleep also, you know, sometimes, so I would say to play around with that a little bit. You might want to, I practice in the evening mostly, so I wouldn't say you necessarily have to change that because I'm guessing you've selected evening because that does seem to work better for you. So maybe find a different place to meditate. But I would say definitely don't do your formal meditation practice in bed. Once you fall asleep, you're no longer practicing.
Right.
So that's the danger. But it's fine to get into bed and like do a body scan or work with your breath. But that's separate from, you know, your other more formal alert practice.
Somebody in the chat box says they have been guilty as charged of listening to respond. I mean, it is the easiest thing to do and the hardest thing not to do is to. Somebody else asks, Tara, could you repeat the quote that you had read about listening?
The biggest communication problem we have is we do not listen to understand, we listen to reply.
Okay.
The biggest communication problem we have is we listen to understand. We do not listen to understand, we listen to reply. And
if anyone does have the citation for that,
I know we could Google it and figure out who said it, but even it was like on LinkedIn or Facebook, and it did even say, you know, author unknown. So okay, this
is the internet at work. But okay, so I should also mention that the Alda book that I was quoting from was actually recommended to us by Dr. Judd Brewer during an interview, Tara, which you conducted with Judd for a series that we entitled Tara Science Corner. And I want to make sure folks know that they can watch the video of that interview along with the videos of your interviews with Sarah Lazar and Chris Liddy, two other great mindfulness researchers, on our YouTube page, youtube.com/mindthemoment. So Tara, I'm wondering, it's been a few weeks since you actually conducted those interviews with Judd and Sarah and Chris. Is there anything that's been sticking with you from those interviews that you know, some particular takeaways that you're still ruminating on or that have continued to fascinate you?
Yeah, so I think that what I love is that they have such a deep level of commitment to doing this work. And many of them started many, many years ago before this was a culturally popular topic. And so it sort of reinforces for me that no matter what, the depth of their connection and their belief in how these practices can inform our lives, bring us more ease and joy and greater connection to one another, like those, you know, their deep commitment to this and to seeing it and not giving up, especially, I mean, all of them, because, I mean, they're all PhDs and we're, you know, subtly or not so subtly discouraged at times from selecting this as an area of study. So I think, you know, I'm just deeply grateful, and their commitment to these practices really continue to inspire me. And that's what I walk away with.
Yeah, you know, one thing that I noticed when rewatching these sessions, I mean, they're so enthusiastic, and I think it's you can see how excited they are about doing
Yes,
this research.
yes.
They are, you know, they do not have a neutral relationship with it. This is something that they are not only professionally but personally passionate about, and it really
Yeah.
comes through in talking with them.
Yes.
In looking back at Sarah Lazar's interview, I was reminded about the newest research she talks about briefly, which is about whether or not mindfulness practice might help stop cognitive decline or reduce
Yes.
the
Yeah. With
speed
early
of
onset
cognitive
or
decline.
early stages
Mhm.
of dementia. Yeah.
And I have to say, what was interesting was, I mean, here's what I felt hearing this. I mean, every time I hear her talk about this, I get this, you know, jolt of excitement because there's cognitive decline in my family.
Yes. Yeah.
But then I also realize that I'm developing this like this craving for it. You know, it makes me think, oh, I need to meditate for this reason, and I think I fall into that trap then,
Yeah.
making of getting goal oriented. I don't know if you have any thoughts about that, about trying to avoid bringing that that focus of like I want to accomplish something
Yeah.
specific in my practice.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a really common thing. So I always just say, and of course I can see it in myself as well, but then just soften around it. And I think it might have been John Kabat-Zinn, or one of my teachers along the way has said, you know, there's nothing wrong with having a goal for yourself, or, you know, especially as it relates to this practice, but hold it very loosely and see what happens. So when you feel yourself tight around it, because I think in this practice, for many of us, there can be a lot of striving. Like it's just such a common thing. Like I want to get more concentrated and I'm going to really like strive. And the idea is sort of loosen around it, continue to practice, and then see what happens.
Yeah, it reminds me of a friend of mine who heard that you know, kale was good for you, right? Which it is, but then he bought like a
Yeah.
juicer and began drinking like pints and pints of kale juice a day. And there's something
Yeah.
about not going overboard with it.
Yeah.
But we've had a couple people in the chat box, who are very, I think, very good at Googling, I'm guessing, who found that
Yes.
it's Stephen Covey or Covey,
Yes.
Covey, who said this quote: "The biggest communication problem is we do not listen to understand, we listen to
Yeah.
reply."
Interesting. So he's the 7 Habits guy.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
there you go.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Well, you know, when I teach this, and it probably somehow came from Covey that I didn't know. I will often say when we're in a conversation with another person, we're either speaking or we're formulating a reaction, you know, and then mindfulness can kind of come right in the middle of that and help you keep at bay. Yeah.
I always say we have excellently smart viewers, so that's you know, that's more proof of that. So all right, always hate to bring us to a close, but but you know, to that end, we'll be back every Tuesday and Friday, 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time. You can find the links to these sessions and other resources at our main site, harvardpilgrim.org/mindfulness. If you have any questions for our experts that we did not get to here, or if you think of any questions for them later on in the week, please send them along to askmtm@harvardpilgrim.org, and we will get them answered. Or feel free to leave me a voicemail at 617-509-7047. We'd love to have you look at the free resources around mindfulness and pain management, which we're offering through a partnership with Mindful Magazine. Those can be located at mindful.org/pain. You can see all the good stuff we've been up to lately on our Facebook page at facebook.com/mindthemoment. You can rewatch this session, older sessions, introductory sessions featuring Tara Healey, and also the archived interviews that Tara conducted with Judd Brewer, Chris Liddy, and Sarah Lazar on our YouTube page, youtube.com/mindthemoment. And by the way, somebody in the chat box was asking where they could find they were having trouble finding the archived episodes of the Coffee House. So there is a playlist on the YouTube page, Coffee House in the Cloud. You have to scroll down to get to the more recent ones, because it begins with the oldest ones, and then you have to scroll quite a bit to get to the most recent ones, because we have now compiled quite a few. but they're there. And
yeah, I've noticed that too, John. It's a little tricky. Yeah, because you kind of have to like, where am I? How do I get there?
I know yes, I'll have a look and see if we can make that a little bit better organized. But
yeah,
a final word, if I may, from
yeah.
Thich Nhat Hanh's 2001 talk in New York. He said, quote, "We have the seed of anger in our consciousness. We have the seed of despair, of fear, but we also have the seed of understanding, wisdom, compassion, and forgiveness. If we know how to water the seed of wisdom and compassion in us, these seeds will manifest themselves as powerful sorts of energy, helping us to perform acts of forgiveness and compassion." So Tara, I want to thank you for bringing water with which to nourish our own seeds of wisdom and compassion this morning. I'm wondering if you have any final thoughts for folks on how they might continue to stretch and grow their practices this coming week?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say that practice can be both, sort of on the cushion formal like we did this morning, but also to integrate it into your daily life. So since today we talked a lot about the power of listening, it might be an interesting practice this week to kind of notice your own patterns around listening. So, just as whether it's on the phone or over Zoom or, because we're not engaging necessarily with the outside world quite as much as we used to, but still we have so many opportunities. So just watch your patterns.
That's great. And as we're talking, I'm hearing my son waking up in the other room. Don't worry, his mother is with him. He hasn't been left alone. But I'm realizing with a newborn, if you're not paying attention, every crying seems like the same thing. But as I've been spending time with him, I'm realizing there's actually a lot of subtle cues, and different cries mean different things. So I'm trying to listen deeply to what he's telling me so I can give him what he needs.
Yeah.
So that's my practice for this week. So thank you again, Tara. Thank you to everyone for joining us.
Thank you so much, everybody.
All right, folks, have a momentous day and weekend.